All right, hello and welcome everybody. I believe we're online now. Maybe if somebody who is active in the chat can just comment and confirm that you can all see the slides and hear me, then that way I'm a bit more confident in continuing. But I guess awesome. Thanks, Mark. Yes, awesome. So we can get this started. So first things first, yes, the webinar will be recorded and you should get an automated email in about 24 hours from now to review it if you like to, or maybe you have to jump off like halfway through it. So no worries about that. So for today, what I've planned is actually go through 3 steps. First, a couple of things about myself for those who haven't really known me yet. And then I'm actually going to jump directly into the demo before then getting back to the slides and getting into a bit more details and, the nitty-gritty stuff. So without further ado, I am basically the creator of xlwings. It's been quite some time. So it's been 8 years and still going strong. And I'm also the author of the book that came out last year, which is called Python for Excel. And as you may have guessed, it talks about xlwings, but it does also talk about a lot of other things. So it basically is meant for beginners and gives you an introduction to Python, an introduction to pandas, and then also touches on the reader and writer libraries that you can actually use to directly read and write Excel files, as opposed to xlwings, which interacts and automates the actual Excel application. So it's sort of like an introduction that should give you everything that's currently going on in the world of Python and Excel. And finally, I'm also the CEO at XLTrail. XLTrail, as you can tell by the name, is also dealing with Excel files. But unlike xlwings that uses Python to automate Excel, XLTrail is basically version control. So you can track your Excel workbooks in Git. And unlike GitHub or all the other suspects, including GitLab or Bitbucket, XLTrail doesn't just give you a button to download the Excel file, but it allows you to actually see what's going on inside. So we're tracking the cell formulas. We're tracking VBA code if that's still something you want to do. We also track like Power Query and named ranges, etc., and then give you like a visual diff for you to be able to see what's going on in those Excel files. So here is, though, what we're going to talk about today. So whoever follows me on social media, saw me posting this earlier on. So by far the most prominent questions I've got basically from day one with xlwings was always, can I deploy xlwings without having to install Python? And so far, the answer has always been no. You do absolutely need Python installed locally and also need to have a local installation of Excel. And so today, at the end of the webinar, you will see that with the new remote interpreter, neither of those things are basically required anymore. So like if you like, you can go for a full cloud deployment, which can make a few things substantially easier. And also the second top, top question was basically, how can I protect my proprietary Python code? So there seems to be a lot of people who believe that there is all kind of things happening if like a client of theirs gets their hands on their secret code. I've always thought that's not like such a big deal as everybody makes it to be, but obviously it is a plus if you don't have to do that. And so the remote interpreter also does solve this issue, as we will see in a moment. And so at the moment, sort of like the best solution that I have come up with, and this is sort of part of the service I provide within the xlwings Pro offering, is basically giving clients an easy way to put together an installer. And what that means is like they can, get access to a GitHub repository. They upload their requirements.txt file. They click a button, basically release this tool, and it'll compile together an installer that contains Python and all those third-party libraries that they will need for their xlwings tool to work properly. And at the end of the day, the end user doesn't really know how to, what Python is. They just need to click that install button here on the screenshot. And it sort of magically works because the Excel workbook has to be or will be set up so it knows where that Python installer has been unpacking the file. So that's been sort of like working reasonably well, or let's say like, it's a sort of a good second best solution, but it doesn't change any of the facts that everything is still local. Python is installed locally, maybe a bit easier than, like the plain vanilla methods out there. And most definitely your Python code is also still locally available. And it can be embedded in Excel, but then, it's just on a hidden sheet. So it definitely is still there. So it didn't really solve those issues properly. And so today, in the demo, we're going to see how the new, basically the new remote interpreter will solve all these issues properly and how this works. And so before I basically start sharing my screen, I'll just basically, like to say 2 words about how everything works, so you sort of like know, what's coming. So basically, what I've come up with over the last 3 months is to create really to give xlwings the support to be easily integrated in a web framework. And so what we're building is really and literally a web app. But instead of using the browser and HTML, JavaScript, CSS as our front end, we're just using Excel as our front end, which has the incredible power, of making front end development accessible for, not so talented people on the front end side like myself. So you can use the desktop Excel version as your front end, but you can also use Google Sheets or Excel on the web. And as you can see here on the screen, Excel on the web and Google Sheets, these are absolutely new supported platforms that previously weren't available at all. And so basically we have, on the left-hand side, we have one of these clients, and then we talk to a server, which again uses a web framework of your choosing. So I personally will be using Fast API in this demo because it's the modern way to go about it. But xlwings in that respect is framework agnostic. So if you have large code bases available in Django and Flask, the good news is you can just keep on using it. You just expose an endpoint with that xlwings functionality. And so in a bit more detail, to give you sort of like a quick preview on the code, it is basically the previous slide here, a transfer to a bit of code. This is how it works. So on the VBA side, you're going to be using the run remote Python call, give it the endpoint of your web server and potentially an API key. And then on the server side, basically within your web framework, you just basically have to wrap your xlwings magic into a new way of instantiating a book object here. So previously in classic xlwings, you would just supply the file path, and now you just supply basically the body of your post request that you receive here. And at the end of what you do in xlwings, you just return basically the JSON method here, which then is responsible for sending the instructions to the front end. And so in between those 2 lines, everything is as before. So you can just copy paste or take over your previous xlwings scripts and make them work on the server. As a heads up, it's still early stage, so not the full API is covered, but more about that at the end of the presentation. All right, so having said all this, let's finally get started on that introductory demo. So what I've planned is basically start with the quick start example. Any of you who have used xlwings previously definitely use the quick start command. This time we're going to use it with a special and new switch, command line switch. And then we're actually making a jump and deploying our xlwings web backend to production. We're going to use Heroku for that. I'm going to say a few more words about that, obviously, when you get there. And then finally, we're going to test out this production deployment, both from like a local Excel version and also from Google Sheets. And maybe if time allows, we'll see we can also look into Excel on the web, because I assume that probably the crowd here is still more Excel oriented. We're also going to use this GitHub repository here for one of the examples. So I'll be pasting the URL there. So in the chat, give me 1 second here so that you can also follow along. There you go. Whenever we get there. So, all right. So let me start and share my desktop. Okay, awesome. All right, so as I said, let's start as we usually start. At least that's me, a new xlwings project. Let me actually switch to this guy here. All right, so that would be xlwings quick start, and then the name of the project. Let's go with demo, and then this time I'm going for the fast API command line switch here. And what this does is, as usual, it creates a little project folder in here. As you can see, I've got like an Excel file that I'm opening. And as you can see, I'm on my Mac here, so it definitely works on both Excel platforms. And so let's just open this project real quick in Visual Studio Code. And as you can see, it's sort of really simple. So if we make the sidebar go away for a second, you can see it's really the same. Maybe we can make this a bit bigger. It's really the same, hello world sample that the classic xlwings quick start will give you. But as I said, it's wrapped into the new instantiation here of the book object, and also the return here. And other than that, it's got this minimal, boilerplate from Fast API. If you're new to it, it's so minimal, it should be minimally, you should be minimally distracted by that. The full app, though, you can open the app.py here. And the full app is really just a few lines here. It's creating a fast API application here. It's basically going to allow you to protect your application with an API key, and that's pretty much it. But that's complete boilerplate, so we can definitely just focus here on that tool. And so I could really just run this main.py, and then basically go to my developer tab and add a button here like this. And then as you can see, I've included a sample remote call. And so just before we click that button, let's open the VBA editor. And as you can see, it's basically the sample code here that I've shown you in one of the previous slides. So it really just requires the endpoint. It uses localhost here and a development key. And so that's about it. You can click the button and you get this "Hello by xlwings" up there, and you can see the web server responding to our requests. And so it's pretty much working from here on, sort of like as you're used to. So give it a change, and you will see that change immediately reflected, because Basically, Ubicorn, which is the web server that Fast API uses, is watching your local files. Now, that's pretty awesome. And as you can probably see, it also is most likely more, speedier than in the classic xlwings version, where it was actually going out to a shell, then spinning up the Python environment, and only then basically writing back to the Excel worksheet. Whereas here, it's just a web app. It waits for your call and is instantly ready. So this is how the most basic Hello World sample works. And so I've told you that as a next step, we're going to actually deploy this web application to a real production site. And so in this link that I've posted, I've actually included this deploy to Heroku button, which makes it brutally easy to spin up such a toy app, or, well, let's not call it toy app, it could be your production app. And so the only thing you really need to do is put in your xlwings Pro license key. You can get one on the trial page here. But if this is for private and non-commercial use, you can also just put in the non-commercial key and then click on the deploy app button. And so this should take about, I don't know, like between like a half minute and a minute to really, deploy your code into a production-ready application. And so I've chosen Heroku simply for the fact that they allow you to add these buttons here to existing projects and make things super easy for beginners who may not have like a whole lot of experience in the web development space. And so as you can see, what we are actually deploying here is really just this folder. It is like the quick start that we've just generated on the local desktop. Again, that was just a boilerplate. It's that one here, but I've also included a little bit of a more, step 2 of the Hello World examples, which is going to give us the functionality of Y Finance. So we're going to fetch data from Yahoo Finance and going to deploy this in our Excel spreadsheet. So so as I said, it's a quick start sample, but it's adding a second call to make things a little bit more interesting. And so in the meantime, our Heroku app has already deployed. And by the way, they have like a free tier. So what we've been deploying here is actually for free on my personal account. If you want to, well, they have the thing that like after 30 minutes, like the app is going to sleep. So next time you actually invoke it, it takes a little longer. But if you actually want to, enroll in one of their plans at the lower end, it's super cheap. So it's like $7 per month. But as I said, Heroku is just my choice here to make things super easy for everyone to get started. But like if you go to the documentation, you will have a section under remote interpreter where it says production deployment, and I have like a whole bunch of services listed here that you may want to give, a look. You could use a serverless function, etc., etc. So, I mean, honestly, anything that is capable of running a Python function on a server will, fit the bill. And it definitely depends, like whether you're a startup or whether you work like in a more traditional business, where you basically have to knock on the door of the IT department. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on Manage App. And we're going to click on View. And so Manage App, well, View basically gives us just the URL that we need. So this is going to be the URL that we are now going to replace here. So, moving this from our local host to the cloud is really just that. And I need to obviously include the endpoint, which is /hello. And so, in an attempt to make this secure, I have, in this deployment, I have auto-generated a private, a token for you. So basically, you can go in here, under settings and under config vars, unhide it, and then you will see the xlwings API key. So you take that and we'll replace our development key here with that production key. And that should pretty much be it. So let's save this. And let's actually, stop our local development server. And then when we click that button, then we should have a working version of that again. And so as you can see, this is now using a production deployment on, through the internet, and it still works pretty okay. So what we can do at this point is basically we could see what's going on in the application. So Heroku has this, offers this way of like live tailing your application logs. And so basically when I click this button, we should be able to see, as you just saw, that the logs here will reflect our request to the backend. And so this is basically how you can easily deploy your application to the cloud and then have people just open that spreadsheet and they won't need anything more. So what they will need definitely is the xlwings add-in, either that or you will need to set up the Excel file in the standalone mode. And in this case, you will get the same, basically, the same experience as before in the standalone mode, except that they don't need to have a Python installation locally. So you just give them the macro-enabled cheat and they click the button. And as long as they don't have like a firewall that blocks the call, they will be off and ready to get going. But, well, Excel files is a local file, and that is still a burden to many people or many IT departments. They don't really love people sending out different Excel files. So what you can do is, obviously these days, you can switch the Excel application to the cloud. And as I said before, we do have two options nowadays. We do have Google Sheets. And by the way, Google Sheets these days can also open Excel files without having to convert them. So it's an incredibly nice environment to basically like deploy your Excel application. And so we're going to look at this, and my preference is basically for Google Sheets, over the web Excel, because they're just sort of like, still much ahead and everything does work much smoother. But it does work on Excel on the web. So you may want to go for that on your end. And so basically, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go to apps script. Of that, as you see, I've just created this. It's even untitled. It's a new Google spreadsheet. If I open the apps script editor, this is basically your VBA editor for Google Sheets, right? You have this empty function stub. We're going to get rid of that, and we're going to get rid of that by basically switching over here, and I could say xlwings copy Google Sheet. And what that will do is basically it copies the Google Apps script module for me. So I just need to, I can overwrite this, just get rid of that. I paste it and I'm pretty much ready to go. So the only thing here that's left is the same as before. So I will need to configure this properly. Just gonna go ahead and, pick those values from here. Gonna put this into the URL here, and then again for the API key. And I'm gonna say 1-2 words about that when we get back to the slides. But like on Google Sheets, you do have also the option to use basically the whatever happened here. You are able to use an OAuth token here that will allow you to actually identify the user on the xlwings or the web backend. But for the sake of this hello world sample, I'm just gonna go ahead with those standard setup of the hello world function. And so when I take this out now, split the screen into two, then I should be able to just run this function. And what is it going to do the first time now that we run it is it will ask us for permissions. And that's why, you see it running for a while now. So this only happens the very first time. But what you will need to give it access to is two things. I mean, first of all, you need to log in with the account you're using. And then you're going to say that it's okay. That's basically communicating, with our external service, which is our xlwings backend, wherever that is, right, on your servers usually. And then obviously it needs to be able to write back and read and write back to the spreadsheet. So that's the two authorization here that we need to give it. And once that's done, you can see it appearing here, and then you can just rerun it again, and you will get the by xlwings. And so at this point, we could now just switch to the Yahoo sample. And so all you need to do is basically change that endpoint, and that's going to give us basically access to the other function here. So like if you follow along on GitHub, maybe, then that will be this function below here. And so like if you have a quick look at what it does, is basically the first time, if it doesn't find a sheet called Yahoo, it's going to add basically a template. And then if that template sheet is there, it's going to use that yfinance package to download your time series. And the yfinance package obviously returns a pandas data frame. And so, as you're used to, you can just take that data frame and assign it to a top left corner on your workbook. And so let's see how this is going to work out. And so let's switch back here. And let's run the other endpoint, the Yahoo endpoint. And so as you see, this adds, in the first step, this adds the new sheet with my template here. And just to show you, the possibilities here of what Google allows you to do is basically same as adding a button on Excel. It allows you here to draw a little rectangular shape. We call that run. And obviously we're going to also center that. And then we save and close it. And then all we need to do is like right click on it, say assign a script. And that's our hello script here. And that's all we need. So let's put this in a bit of a more favorable position. And then basically at this point, I can just run the script and we'll get back my data frame if everything works out fine. But it could be a network latency. So that's usually super fast. It could be the Yahoo Finance service that's down. I could actually look at the logs here if there's something. So yeah, probably. Okay, that's okay. That's unexpected, but probably, yeah. Okay, there's probably a bug somewhere. Let me just try one thing. Let me see if the yeah, it complains about the date format issue, but I mean that should be taken care of. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually trying the same thing here on my on my local version. So let's see if it's complaining about the same issue here. Right. So that should again add my template here. And then let's just add this button again and do this again. And let's see what it says. Yeah, so it works here. So there may be a little thing going on Google Sheets. I'm not going to debug this now on the webinar, but it may just be a little issue, and I'm sure it's a detail. So as you can see, so what I can do now is I can switch the the beginning here, and that will actually give me a time series for like a year back. And so that's quite some time series that you like, you can look at. And then obviously you can also then whatever it is, change the ticker and maybe go back to 2022, so just like a month of values. And then that will again truncate our data frame here the way that it comes back. And so, well, okay. So now that the Google Sheets thing didn't work, I'm actually curious to see if we can make this work on the other platform, on Office.com. So basically, works very much the same here. You would just have a spreadsheet here, and once it's loaded. You'd actually have to have access to the Automate tab, and it usually takes like a second until it shows that tab. Yeah, so there you go. And then you could actually just add a new script. So let's do that here. And then you would again run here that copy command. So basically you say xlwings copy and then office script, and that will give you the code which is going to run on the site over here. So we just delete that, we paste our office script, and then we are going to paste the URL. And I'm taking it over from I'm taking it over from here, let's say, and paste it in here. So that will be the URL plus the hello endpoint. And then again, my settings, the key, and then bring that into here. There is a need here really to save that script first, and then I can run that code. And well, okay, that is calling the hello function, so that worked. What I actually wanted to do is the more funny demonstration with the Yahoo endpoint. So that again should add the spreadsheet here, activate it. So, and then we do the same call again, and if we're lucky, then it does work here indeed on the cloud. So yeah, I don't know. I'll definitely look into what happened on the Google Sheets side, and we'll let you know after the call. So this is basically how the call is compatible with the cloud version of Excel, and usually the Google version of it. All right, so that was about the live demo. So that brings me back to the Google, to our little presentation here, to the slides, and I can give you a few more details of how everything works and what we are looking at. So again, I think I briefly mentioned it before. So the functionality I've just shown you, so using the remote interpreter, is basically part of the Pro package. That's basically the case because the Pro package allows me to, spend more time on developing the open source package and keep maintenance going forward. And what's relatively new, though, if have missed that recently, it's free for your personal use. It's free for non-commercial use. So it's only going to cost you something if you use this within your company. And well, what was important to me was that also like license key management was a non-hassle experience. So you basically just get a key for a developer, and then for deployment, that works basically royalty free. So you don't need to have every single user who accesses your tool go through like the hell of setting up a key. So that should really be easy as cake. So now, what are the advantages of using the remote interpreter? So one of the advantages, obviously, it runs on Linux, and you can use all your web application servers. You can deploy it to Kubernetes. You can deploy it on a Raspberry Pi. So there's no limits. And I mean, you can run it on a Windows server too. It's just usually not the best thing to do. And obviously, well, if you want, you can go to full cloud experience. So you don't have the biggest headache that xlwings always has is, deploying the local runtime of Excel. Now, yeah, so that opens up the door to basically give you support for the web-based spreadsheets that is previously not possible. And also, one of the biggest advantages actually to, you will be able to leverage the power of the server. So you can actually have a cron job or whatever automation that downloads data, let's say on an hourly basis, or maybe on a 5-minute basis, or maybe just on a daily basis, from wherever that the data is coming from, and it can do some initial data processing. And when you then go to Excel and click the button, it can access the previously pre-processed data. So you could potentially see a brutal speed up in your calls because of that simple thing that it's easy to automate on a server. Then obviously, we probably have come across an issue on Windows with COM, all of us, if we've ever used it. So that's just, swapped out. We're not going to use that anymore. And that is a good thing. And so currently, I mean, it's still super early stage, right? So currently what it does is it supports the run Python call, but having basically this web server technology opens up the door to add user-defined functions, or custom functions as they are called these days. The support for them on not just Windows as we have it these days, but also on Mac OS and on Google Sheets. Excel on the web doesn't support functions yet on the Office scripts, so there it isn't possible. But maybe that's going to change over the course of the next years. Who knows? And then on top of that, what you gain by using the remote interpreter is an extreme increase in security. And what I mean by that is that you're going to access your databases, your internal APIs, some third-party APIs, and whatnot from your Excel tool, because I guess what I see most often, what people use is definitely a database connection, and so that database connection credentials, that has to be stored somewhere, right? And traditionally, that's either somewhere on like a spreadsheet, or maybe on VBA, or maybe on like a local file on your desktop. In any way, it just isn't ideal. So let's say like if you have it in the spreadsheet and somebody gets their hands off on the spreadsheet who shouldn't, then, your credentials are exposed and they can basically log into your database, which isn't ideal. And then you have to go to your database and rotate the credentials there, which, is a hassle. In turn, if you go for the remote system here, the remote interpreter, what happens is that the Excel workbook, whether that's in the cloud or local, communicates with the backend with just a token. And a token can be application specific, can be for all the same. It can be like for a specific user. But whenever that spreadsheet or that token gets in the hands of somebody who shouldn't have that, all you need to do is rotate that token on the backend. And this is basically where like Google Sheets makes things so much easier, even because you can leverage the OAuth token directly from Apple, from the apps script. And so basically, it's the user. You can verify the token on the backend. By the way, there is on the GitHub repository, there is a folder that has such an example. And so there is actually not much that can happen, even if other people are getting access to that sheet, they won't have the credentials to use the application. And so that's just a huge benefit, because all of those sensitive data, and whether that's just credentials or like client data, you can just keep them on the server and you can properly secure them, and they never touch your front end. And so that's just makes every IT security person responsible for that app at your company definitely much happier. All right, so that's security. And here to conclude, the limitations are basically, well, you're moving within the classic within the web's request response cycle, which means that whenever you get, basically the server starts processing the request, it is on the state of your spreadsheet at the moment that basically you hit that run button. And so what you may have done in classic xlwings, but which in any case isn't probably a very good pattern, is you could have done in classic xlwings, you could have basically said, okay, I'm going to write a number or a value in a specific cell, and then have Excel calculate the whole workbook, and then as a next step read in maybe the result of another cell, and then continue in your code. So that's not possible in this version of xlwings, in the remote version. So basically this is, you get the state where it is, you process your things, and then you send everything back, and all the instructions basically that you do are then going to be like replayed back to Excel. And that's actually probably a good thing. So you don't go back and forth. It's just like one cycle, but still good to be aware of that. Then definitely, to deploy, you do need knowledge about web applications. I mean, the whole web backend is really good to understand what's going on. Often probably not an issue, because there is a developer who can take over this part, but nevertheless it's good to having this mentioned. And then all the data is going to be sent back and forth. At the moment you can basically exclude certain sheets. So like if you misuse or abuse the spreadsheet as a database, then you can like block very heavy sheets, so they're not going to be sent back and forth. But that's obviously, it's like a web application. I mean, you wouldn't send the whole data back and forth. So if there's lots of data in your spreadsheet, then you should probably, now that you can, put it in a database that it's being, that will be accessed from your web application. And then obviously in corporate environments, it may take a long time to spin up a server. But as I said before, from my experience, IT is happier to manage a server for you than if you tell them you want them to like deploy, the Python runtime on each personal computer of everybody involved. And then at the end, the last point here is you do need to have this, basically the component on the front end. So you would need to have Google Apps Script or Office scripts for Excel on the web, or VBA on the classic desktop version. The classic xlwings version obviously is a script that can run in in Python and just remote control Excel. So that's not for this case. This is exclusively for the case of running, of basically triggering your Python logic from the spreadsheet itself. Yeah, so that I believe is going to be, yeah, the last slide. And so sort of like wrapping up where we are on the project here. So I think I mentioned it, it's only like 3 months old. And it can, in quotes, sort of like at this point only read and write data. But what's sort of like important to mention, I mean, it does do a few things here on the Sheets API. So it's like the Sheets API and the Range API in terms of dot value. But what's like important to mention here, I guess, it's still super powerful because it does already take care of all the type conversions. So as you can see here, these guys are actually dates. If you, even though it didn't work here, you should still see like, yeah, okay, that could be the reason. So usually that, okay, there's something going on with the date conversion here. But then usually we'd get like the date picker here on Google Sheets. And so yeah, it just takes care basically of converting date time into a date formatted cell on Excel. It takes care of strings and whatnot. So you can just move over your data frame, and in that case, you can do a lot of things already at this day and age. And so going forward, definitely my plan is to add support basic for the full xlwings API. So that includes charts, shapes, named range, and whatever we currently cover in the current xlwings API. And I'm also going to look into basically making this available for user-defined functions. Not quite sure if it's going to be fast enough, but it may be a use case nevertheless. So definitely want to try this one out. I definitely think it's going to be pretty cool on at least to add support for user-defined functions on the Mac version of Excel. And well, then I could also imagine that basically it's at the end of the day, it could be actually the stronger or more promising technology than COM or the Apple script sort of Frankenstein monster that I'm dealing with on Mac. So this could very much like replace the standard way of calling their own Python functionality. But in order for doing this, it definitely would require to be like baked in the way that we currently have things working in the current version of xlwings. And then definitely there's always room for improvement. At this stage, my goal was to make things work properly. And then it's not everything is done in a most efficient manner, so there's definitely room for improvement there. And so that's pretty much what I've planned for today. So at this point, let me just like catch up if there's like any questions that I have missed on the chat that I could basically answer now. So let me see. So yeah, so we'll see. Somebody said we'll see how it works with AWS. That shouldn't be any issue. I mean, that shouldn't be any different from any other sort of backend service. In what way would a firewall block this process? It looks like a standard HTTP request process from a networking perspective. Right. So that is only an issue on, I mean, the good thing is that this is only an issue on like the local version of that thing. And so the VBA function basically has parameters where you can put in proxies, for example, if proxy is a thing. If you have a firewall that blocks any sort of like outgoing requests, then you would have to enable that or make an exception. But given that you can host the basically the web app on your internal servers, well, at least like if things have been set up properly, you could expect that these endpoints or these domains, internal domains, are exempt from firewall rules. And so I would expect that this should be working in this case. So is there any way for the Python application to push content asynchronously as a result of an external event to the spreadsheet? Well, not right now, but I think it may be something that I can look into in the future. But like priority wise, I think it would come like pretty much below all the other points here. Is there any way to access local SQL Server on a real-time basis with Heroku? Depends on what you mean by local SQL Server. So usually if you use Heroku, they have a hosted service, a hosted Postgres service. I don't know, like if you're talking about something like what's it called, SQLite, then Heroku may not be the best platform because they don't have really like a file-based system. In that case, you should be looking into one of the other options that are on that on the docs, and one of them that looks pretty interesting to me is fly.io. It's basically pushing a Docker image, and other than that, works pretty much the same as Heroku, but they give you access to a local hard drive, so they have persistent storage there. So then there was the Google Sheets issue. Sorry about that. And so, yeah, I think that's regarding the SQL thing that I've just sort of answered. Are you going to do a bit training course for covering more details? Yes, that is what I do plan at some point. So I'm actually just, planning to pimp the current course to include basically the remote interpreter. But, given that it's so early stage, I probably push this back a little bit until the functionality is a little bit more mature. And I think that is pretty much it for all the questions. So hope you found this halfway interesting. If you have any questions, following up, if you want to give this a try and see how it behaves, that I would be more than happy to enable a bit of communication channel to see what are the most painful points at the moment, so to drive this quickly into the correct and right direction. Any updates for next webinar? No, not at this point, but you will definitely get invited. So like as long as you follow my LinkedIn account or Twitter account or subscribe to the xlwings newsletter, which you will find at the bottom of the xlwings.org page. Lawrence, you can simply send me an email. So my email is just this guy here. You will find it anywhere you look for. You can find it on xlwings.org under team. If you go to the footer, you find it on GitHub on my profile. So you should be able to get a hold of me. Or I believe the invite for this webinar is, I believe, also sent from my personal account. So you can just reply to those webinar invites. All right, then. Thanks so much for joining, and I'm definitely looking forward to drive this forward with you. And see you in the next webinar or on social media. Bye-bye. So the video will be made available on a link that is being sent to you tomorrow. So you will definitely get it. Great. Look forward to talking to you, Lawrence. Bye, guys. Bye-bye.